Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new day of Road to TCG World 2019. Today, instead of discussing a deck list, we're actually gonna be talking about the tiers of different decks and what we have seen so far after the first weekend of tournament results in terms of which decks have been performing, which decks haven't been, I guess, as expected. Yeah, and what the tiers are looking to shape into. Big props to Limitless for providing all this information, guys. Limitless TCG is probably the most invaluable resource that we have right now in the Pokemon trading card game. So as you can see, we have the best decks by points. Yeah, by the points the Limitless ends up using to weigh the results, and it's not divided by championship points. They have a different scaling system to determine how successful a deck has been, as it does weigh the amount of players that attended the tournament. But so far, I think I can agree with most of what I'm looking at right here. So first off, we can notice that Zapdos is at the very top. Now, I think this makes a lot of sense. Zapdos decks in general are super good. The non-GX attacking Pokemon can deal a lot of damage, and you have Jirachi for reliability, and you have a lot of ways in which you can pair the deck with different partners. You can pair it with Buzzwole and Basic Fighting Energies. You can add in the whole Ultra Beast package with the Rainbow Energies. You can play it as a pure Lightning deck with Jolteon. So a lot of flexibility for the deck and a lot of options to accommodate your playstyle and also potentially the metagame that you are expecting. Now, in second place, we do have Reshiram and Charizard tag team, which clearly I have some weight put into that one, since it did won 2 out of the 3 regionals last weekend. And now here's something important that I think we should consider. Zapdos and the cards for the Zapdos deck have basically been out for 3 months, right? A little bit more even. Whereas the cards for the Reshiram and Charizard decks, they've only been out for 3 weeks, yeah? And not only that, but the cost of the Charizards, and I do believe this is a new trend we are seeing, like the high cost of building a Charizard deck might actually be something that is limiting its success purely because not enough players are wanting to buy into the deck, right? Because it is, I don't know, like at least a $300 deck more or less, between the Charizards and potentially the Jirachis and the Dedenne. The costs do start piling up, so I think we are at a point right now in the game where the game is getting so popular and the cards are being so sought after that the prices are skyrocketing to the point where they are becoming, like, building any deck is becoming a little bit cost prohibitive. I don't know if you guys agree, but that's something I think I'm noticing. Like, I'm sure a lot more people would have played Charizard over the course of this weekend at all the 3 regionals if the Charizards were cheaper. Yeah, but since they're not, people defaulted to a much cheaper deck, which is Zapdos, which is also incredibly strong. Just a different concept. Yeah, so I think we are seeing a little bit of that. In the last few years, the game had gotten cheaper. Yeah, the GXs had gotten to a point where it was really cheap to build a deck, but the hype, the power of the tag teams, that has been raising the prices. Jirachi at one point was also very expensive. However, it has stabilized since. So I do think that has had a little influence in the results, at least for this weekend. Obviously, that will become less important as time goes on and people eventually get the cards they want to, and we start seeing more tournaments of this format. But I do think that is a factor that might have played a little bit of a role over this weekend in all 3 tournaments. But I think it's undisputed that Reshiram and Charizard tag team, along with Zapdos decks, are the tier 1 decks. Yeah, everything else doesn't quite come close to them, I would say. Obviously, in terms of the points that we're seeing, Zoroark decks are almost up there with Reshiram, but once again, Zoroark is a really cheap deck to build, and if you're playing Zoroark, you're trying to essentially counter the meta. So I I do think once again that cost is becoming a factor in what players decide to play. I'm definitely seeing it locally at my League Cups and League Challenges, just purely on card accessibility and card prices. At a regional, that's not as big, but I do think it is a thing that we have to consider when analyzing objectively a metagame. And so, Zorak did pretty well this weekend at Sydney Regionals and also at Sao Paulo Regionals. Yeah, my top 8, top 4, and final matches were actually against Zorak decks. So we see Zorak accumulate just as many points, or almost as many points as Reshiram and Charizard. However, they didn't end up quite hitting the mark in the end. So I do think Zorak, like on paper, if you have a thick Slowking line and you have a Alolan Muk, on paper you have good matchups against the top 2 decks. Yeah, the tier 1 decks, I would say Zorak is tier 1.5 or the best tier 2 deck. But then when you start seeing at the rest of the decks, that's where Zorak starts to struggle. So I don't know, like playing Zorak Slowking with a Alolan Muk, that means you're going to have a good time against the top 2 decks. But then against the rest of the meta, Slowking is a bit underwhelming. Yeah, and then next up we have Weezing, which once again, a very powerful deck. You can see the jump in points now from Zorak to Weezing is a 50-point jump. So that's a pretty significant amount. Obviously the data we have is only from 3 tournaments, so it's not a big enough sample. These numbers will be changing throughout the rest of the season until NAIC. But I do think Weezing is a very powerful deck. It has, once again, very good matchups against Zapdos decks and Reshiram and Charizard decks, but it does struggle against things like Mill decks, it does struggle against things like Zorak, and even some Reshiram decks that tag in Max Potion and Mill Tank. Those can fight or fend themselves against Weezing decks. So Weezing, a powerful archetype, just not as powerful as Zorak, I would say, in terms of overall power in the metagame compared to just the top 2 decks. Yeah, because Zorak you can keep adapting to have other better matchups. Zorak would do well against Weezing as well, but then Weezing is essentially a counter to potentially the top 2 decks, and that's pretty much it. Next up in line, we do have wall-style decks, as Limitless calls it. However, they're not featuring Wailord anymore, they're featuring Lucario Metal, they're featuring Hoopa, they're featuring Regigigas, and they are featuring Vileplume. So I do think these decks are seeing a lot of success. They're being piloted by very strong players, and also they prey on any misplays or overextensions that your opponents end up doing at any point in the game. So if you're not managing your resources precisely and perfectly against these sort of decks, you are going to struggle quite a bit. So that is something to take into account. I do think that is why these decks are going to be super successful, but I also think that they have an absolutely abysmal Reshiram and Charizard matchup as long as you have some sort of mix between non-GX and GX attackers, and then especially the success that the Vileplume variants are having should prompt Reshiram and Charizard tag team decks to play Flareon GX or Arcanine. I personally prefer Flareon. I think it's more reliable because you can evolve from Eevee right away. But I do think that's going to be a major factor. So as long as they just make sure they have an answer to Vileplume, they should be completely fine against the mill decks, in my opinion, or from my experience at least. And then after that, we have things like Shedinja Control, Malamar, Pikachu, Zekrom Tag Team, Quagsire attacking Vileplume, non-GX plus Efla, and even Vikavolt. Now, those decks, I believe, are there because the sample size of the tournaments in this format, from Sun and Moon until Unbroken Bonds, is so small. As time goes on, I would expect Malamar, Pikachu, and Quagsire numbers to go up, and then the other decks to stay relatively the same or even go down as to where they're at in the best decks by points list. Especially Shedinja Control, I don't think that's a deck that's ever going to be popular enough that it will be at the top point gaining lists. Quagsire is perceived as a pretty solid deck, and it's the best counter, I would say, to Reshiram and Charizard, but it can struggle with consistency issues and against other sort of decks. Excuse me. Attacking Vileplume, once again, a mimic, or a meme, rather not a mimic, a meme, more than anything, where you prey on unprepared or underprepared people, which after the success that Valve has seen, I don't expect any Registrar list to not be playing either an Evolution line or a Stealthy Foot or something along those lines. Baby Evelyn as well, super unstable deck, big old Charjabug as well, more a gimmick than anything else. However, Malamar and Pigrom are definitely well-established, powerful decks that as we go along, I'm sure they will start accumulating more and more points, especially Pigrom. I would expect to rise all the way up to number 4 or number 3 at the very least. So I think this is a very accurate description of what the tiers are going to be looking like, especially at the top. I expect Reshiram and Charizard and Zapdos to be not only the most played decks, but also the most successful overall. And then right behind them, I do expect to see Zorg, Weezing Spread, Male decks, and then combination of Pigrom and Malamar, which do feel a little bit less good right now than they were before, but that's just because Reshiram and Charizard is just a brand new card that is insanely powerful, and the power creep can sometimes just start making some cards look bad. Yeah, Malamar especially, it's like it hasn't changed much. It hasn't gained any cards really from the newest sets. Arguably the 10A, arguably Dugong even, but it hasn't gained too much over the last couple of sets. I'd say nothing too impactful. So that is what is making Malamar stall a little bit. It's always a decent pick. It's a very cost or budget friendly pick, but it's also just not as outright powerful as something like Registrar or even Zapdos decks. So yeah, guys, that's a quick tier list discussion. Tomorrow I will be showing the list that I consider really good for the metagame. This weekend there is no event in North America. I believe there is a tournament in Malaysia, I think, but that's pretty much it. And then afterwards it's Madison Regionals. So it'll be interesting to see what the metagame looks like over there after we've had the triple regional weekend this past weekend. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.